10, 9, 8. Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, I'm going to mark where the forward fins go on the instructions here, which is 3 inches from the back of the upper stage. I have now disconnected the lower stage, make sure I don't get those measurements wrong. But what I'm going to do is, instead of doing these the forward fins first, I'm going to actually do the rear, because I can't get to them to straighten them with that tool, and if these are in the way. So I'm going to do the rear ones first, which line up with the back of the tube, and then do the front ones. Okay, got my rear fins ready to go. I've been bagging them up, the fins in these baggies, just so I don't lose them, they don't get broken. Good way to keep track and keep dust off of them, things like that. So, and I'm going to use the guide here. So what I'm going to do is take my wood glue and put a little bit of a bead on there. And the first thing I'm going to do, like I showed before, and I'll only show this a couple times, so I'm going to push that into the grain and then let that tack up and get almost completely dry, and then I'll be ready to put another line on it and get it ready to install. Okay, that glue is tacky and pretty dry, so now I'm going to put another bead on there. Make sure I go all the way front to back, and I'm just going to clean up the sides a little bit. I don't want too much glue sticking out. Then what I'm going to do is, using my guide, for the first one I can pick any fin I want, any fin line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the back here on the line and then move it to the front. Just kind of a scissor motion to get it to sit where I want. Just make sure it's flush back here. Then I'm going to take my fin alignment guide and I'm going to install it. Make sure slide smooth, and it's going to grip that. You don't want to grip it too tight. And we're going to tape it in place, or rubber band it if you got rubber bands. Okay, so that one's ready to go, and what I'm going to do at the same time, like I had promised, make sure everything is smooth, is I'm going to take, make sure that doesn't fall over, take one of those pitot tubes or whatever they are, and we're going to install that at the same time. So I'm just going to take some glue, put it around the base of it. Okay. I'm going to put it in here. Smooth it a little bit with my fingers. And we're going to make sure that's going to line up. And there's actually, you can kind of see the guide for the fin actually works as kind of a guide for the little tube there. So then we'll just let that set in there and dry, and then we'll move on to the next one. I usually give it overnight just to make sure all the glue bonds are tough, because this is going to come down on the back end here. It is going to have a piece of plastic there to somewhat protect it, but want them as strong as possible. Okay, a little experimenting on this dyno chutes, and trying to see if it's going to fit well in the actual rocket itself. Let's first take a look at it. Again, I got this online from Apogee Rockets. Let's unwind the cords. Okay. Try to keep it as neat as possible. And there it is. Okay. So, doesn't look bad. It's actually got, it's going to have a little less drag than a regular 18-inch parachute because it's an X form. So, let's just take a look as if I was going to actually fold it up. Let's try folding it like this. And then maybe rolling it like so. I'm going to have to put the parachute cord within this. And there's that. And then I've got another rocket which is similar to the one we're building. So we'll take the nose cone off of that and see how well this actually fits down in there. I think we're actually going to be good. Not bad at all. And that'll be wrapped with the parachute recovery piece. But let's just give it a try here real quick. I'm just going to blow through the end. There's the chute. I think it's going to work. Let's try it again. Excellent. Excellent. It all comes out. So I think this is going to work. We're going to be able to get that 18-inch parachute in there. So that's a little bit of the testing on it. We'll put the Nomex wrap around it, which it looks like it had plenty of room and it's nice and slick. So I think we're good to go. Might try a baffle next time. The guys at Apogee actually sell a baffle that can go in the back here of the rocket. And it actually is a chamber that keeps the gases, the heat will dissipate through the baffle. Just the pressure will come out and push everything out, so it won't burn anything. Again, you can use it without using wadding. So that'll be something to try in the future. Alrighty, starting back on the main part of the body, I'm ready to install the engine ring here. That's the retainer ring, and this is the part that goes on the rocket. This is what screws on to keep the engine in. Reason I want to do it now, they tell you to do it after you do all the fins. I want to do it now because I can grip this a lot easier without the fins on there. So we'll go ahead and we're going to attach it right in here. Let's make sure it's got the right direction where it stops. It's got the little stopper there. And we're going to glue that in using the dot dash technique as described earlier in the video with the super glue and the model glue. So we'll go ahead and get that in there and get it straight. It's pretty smooth in there, so we'll get that installed. Okay, got that glued in there and it's holding pretty tight. And basically testing the ring here. Putting the ring in and then putting the fin unit on the back. Making sure that all fits together. So it's going to be like that. And it does fit, and those look like they're buttoned up against each other, so when the ejection charge fires from this, it goes right into that engine, so there's not a lot of gap there. So that's going to help quite a bit. So, alrighty, so we'll take this back off, set that aside. Now a couple other things I've done. Reinforce the super glue on these pieces here. Then I'll do a fillet of the white glue. Also marked that this line here is where I want to have the launch lugs, and this is the line that actually does the forward fin, which is this one here, and it's going to fit like so. So basically the launch lugs are actually going to be on the side of it, and the forward one I marked the back of the launch lug there. Also I did a mark here all the way around at 10 inches for the strake, those pieces of wood strip that are actually going to go along here, and they're actually going to match up to these fins here. So I got all those marked out before I get to a point where I can't either attach that unit to draw circular lines around it or handle it. This is the back line here of the forward fins, which we are going to do next. And we are almost done with this rocket, except for painting. Okay, ready to put the first fin on, and basically I've got it set basically where I want it with the gauge, the guide here. And I'm going to do the usual, putting the glue down. On the edge and rubbing it in and letting it dry and tack up. Alrighty. So we'll let it tack up and then we'll install it. Okay folks, while those fins are drying and getting those all set up, I'm going to show you a technique. This is not necessary, but if you want to make your rocket look really sleek and be really aerodynamic, on this fin we've glued it down with the carpenter's glue, reinforced it with the super glue, and then we went over and did a fillet with more yellow glue or carpenter's glue to strengthen it a little bit and smooth out this joint. But it's still a little rough. If I were to paint it, you would definitely see the bumps and the air bubble holes in the joint there. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a professional job on this, and I'll show you how to do that right now. For this, I'm using 3M's Bondo glazing spot putty. Now what this is a red automotive putty. There's two versions of this. There's one that has a hardener, which is for building up on car bodies and so forth. This is actually a finishing putty, which you actually do not need a hardener. It'll just dry on its own, just like modeling putty if you've ever used that. It doesn't smell real good. It is a lacquer-based material, so just be wary of that. If you don't want to use that, just stick with the yellow glue. But for this, what we're going to do is we're going to put that in the joint here, and then we're going to smooth it out and make it as smooth of a transition as possible. Once it dries, it will not shrink or bubble, and we can sand it down to make a perfect fillet on this edge here. But in order to do that, when we put it on, it's like toothpaste, and it's kind of hard to smooth out with your finger because it'll tear. It'll stick to your finger and tear. So there's a little trick to doing this, and what we're going to do is we're going to use cotton swabs that are thin or washed with a little bit of this thinner. Now this is actually thinner from Metallizer from Testers. By the time you see this video, this stuff may be gone because Testers is getting rid of their Metallizer stuff. This is a lacquer-based thinner with a little MEK in it, I believe, methyl ethyl ketone, which melts plastic, so you do have to be careful. This will actually thin this putty out. But you can only use it once or twice on a plastic part, and then this will actually start to soften the plastic. So I'll show you exactly how I use this. It's kind of a mess, but just bear with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, believe it or not, shake this stuff, because there is a liquid in here and the solid that tend to get mixed up or separated. I'm sorry, and I'm mixing it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shake it up so it gets a little bit combined, and do this in a well ventilated area. And you want to avoid doing it on your fingers. It doesn't really hurt anything, but it is a lacquer based thing, so it can get into your skin and make you not feel so good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this putty and I'm going to stir it around with a toothpick here and pull some of it out. It dries really quick, so we'll have to be kind of quick about how to use this. So we'll cap it back up there so it doesn't smell the whole room up. Okay, get our Metallizer thinner ready. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this putty and I'm just going to put it as carefully as I can in the joint here. And it's not too bad if you make a mess, because we'll clean it up with that thinner. We want it down in there, and basically we want a bit of it because we're going to squish it out. And when we squish it out, it's going to we're going to remove maybe about at least half of this, if not more, and it'll push it into all these crevices. Again, this is not necessary, but it's kind of a good thing if you're really want to do a professional job. So now we got it on there, and before it dries, I'm going to take these Q-tips, I'm going to dip it in the thinner and soak it, but then I'm going to kind of wick it off on a piece of paper here so it's not so wet. And then what I'm going to do is, as I pull it across here, I'm going to lightly go across and I'm going to roll it so it picks up that putty. You'll kind of see what it does here. So I'll roll it, okay, and then I'm going to do it again with a fresh clean swab. Okay, And you're going to use a lot of Q-tips on this. Now I can blow on it, which will evaporate the thinner and keep it from attacking the plastic. I'm just going to go along the side. And eventually it'll get dry to the point where this stuff doesn't pick it up very well. Okay, I'm going to do the part where the body tube is, just trying to get it as thin as possible. That way when we sand it, there's not as much mess to sand. Okay, so now you can see, we'll hit that end a little bit again. Try to get it around that corner. Which actually, it looks like the other super glue and the other white glue or yellow glue made a pretty good fillet there. So basically you want something like that. And this thinner is pretty noxious too, so just be careful of that. It's pretty nasty stuff. And like I said, it does eat plastic. So okay, so we get a little closer here on this, and you're going to see there's going to be a little bit of overlap, you know, of the mess. But when that dries, we'll sand it off, and it'll sand completely smooth. it'll blend in one side to the other. Now this sets up in about a half an hour if you want to sand it after that point. I like to leave it a little longer, that way there's absolutely no shrinkage and everything, every part is dry, because if you have a little thick point that you didn't see, like it went into one of the holes and it's underneath here, it's going to take a little longer to dry. So I'll usually give it a couple hours, if not overnight. So I'll do that to all the fins and then we'll sand them down. Okay, once the putty is dry enough to sand it, what we're going to do is we are going to actually use ideally a 400 grit sandpaper. If you put a little too much and you want to knock it down quick, you can do 220 grit, start with that, and then polish out 320 and then 400 and so on and so forth, ending up with about 600 grit. So now this technique is going to make a mess, all this red dust. So you want to wear a mask, dust mask or a respirator to do this, and eye protection. Also, if you get any of this on your fingers, if you ideally use gloves to work with this stuff. But you can see I got a little on there, but I try to wash it off with soapy water as quick as I can, just to keep it from messing with my skin. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the 400 and I'm going to bend the sandpaper in kind of a bow in the shape of the fillet I want. And I'm just going to lightly sand it. The reason I want to use a lower grit sandpaper and lightly sand is I don't want to sand through this paper coating. There's actually a plastic coating on the paper, and if you sand through that, it's very hard to actually polish that out, and then when you paint it, you're going to actually see the fibers of the paper. So I'm going to just do this real carefully. I don't want it real sharp and get it in there and then get rid of all the putty and have to start over again. But I'll work it up to the front and the back and then end up, go to a 600 grit sandpaper. You can see how easy this stuff sands. I mean, really easy. If it's not giving you a dusty effect like that and it's rolling up in little balls, you are probably not dry yet. So once I finally get this all finished and then painted, it's going to look somewhat like this. This was done the same way. Give you a little tighter view of it here. And you can see on some of it, there's still a few pinholes, which if I was going for a scale competition, I would fill those. I'd go back and fill those with some more putty. But ideally, this is what you want. I mean, you want something that's just, you see absolutely no gap, no anything. You don't want it super thick so it looks really, like a dish. But anyways, that was done with that, and you can see how the paint goes right over it. You can't even really see it like on this one here. There's just nothing there. It's just and underneath that is the super glue and the carpenter's glue. The first carpenter's glue, then the super glue, and more carpenter's glue. So that should be an extremely strong fin unit right there. And then super aerodynamic. So that's how you fill fins if you want to do any scale effect. And just be careful using it. Again, it's automotive putty, and it's a little bit on the toxic side, being that it's a toluene based. So just use gloves and a little common sense, and you can make your rocket look real good. Okay, I took a break just to give you a little tip. Here, these are some items that I just purchased. I wasn't sure about how they would work. I thought they'd be kind of loose, but the way they design these, they actually hold pretty tight to the tube. And what these are is they're actually marking guides, so you can cut tubes perfectly straight all the way around the round part of the tube. And they have actually a second part, and is what I really bought them for. So let's say, excuse me, I was wanting to do a line where my fins have to start, or a launch lug or something like that. And I've been showing you with the other tool, the long piece where you put the pencil in and then roll it. The problem is trying to keep the pressure on the pencil on here. It actually can push the tube, and if it pushes it up a little bit, the line gets a little out of whack. But what these do, these are going to be absolutely perfect. So say I want to mark that right there, and I want to actually draw a line all the way around the tube. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these apart. If I find the right size, this piece here with the little slots in it actually goes on first. So I'll actually put that on, and I'll align that with the mark that I made. So you can see I'm pushing it right up against the mark right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece, and it goes from the other side. And what it does is, as I push this down, it's tapered here, and it will actually press on these, or actually these are tapered, I'm sorry. It'll push on those, and the wedge will push it tight. So when, like right now, I can move this about back and forth. But if I push this and hold this piece, if I push that closed, it's locked on there really good. So if I was to actually want to cut the tube, what I would do is I'd get my X-Acto knife, and I would just press it here, and then I would turn the tube and I would roll the knife around it. You don't have to have it perpendicular like that. You can have it at a little bit of an angle. It'll still cut just the same, because you'll sand it after you're done. Anyways, that will, once you cut that around and it cuts through the tube, kind of like what I showed with the blow molded nose cone, same idea. Just do it slowly, do it in passes, and it'll cut right clean. But also what I'm really going to use it for is just drawing those lines around the tube. So I'm just going to actually, I don't have to worry about this moving at all, because it's crimped on there real tight. And I'll just go all the way around, and then I'll release this with the one piece coming off that I put on last. And be careful, because these are pretty tight, so if you pull them off too fast, you can crush your tube. So pull that off, and right there I have an absolutely perfect line going around. A lot more accurate than using that other tool. Other tool is okay, but I did find that it did get a little wonky every so often. So this is a new way to do lines around the tube circumference like that. And that's a little tip for you.